You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. This November, between 45 to 55 women will compete for the coveted title of Miss Planet International at Phnom Penh's Kopik Theater. Contestants from Asia Pacific, Europe, Latin America, and Africa will compete for a cash prize of $100,000 and the opportunity to spread the message of unity, sustainability, and ending poverty on a worldwide tour. On Saturday, Miss Planet International held a press conference to announce the details of their third annual pageant this November. The organization's president, Hali Amin, noted that the focus on protecting the environment, reducing poverty, and restoring justice sets the pageant apart from others.
We are the only beauty pageant who follow the United Nations Platform Sustainable Development Goal.
The festivities are to run from November 10th through 20th in the Kingdom of Cambodia and will include a golf tournament and swimsuit competition at the Courtyard Marriott in Siem Reap on November 16th. The pageant final will take place on November 19th in Phnom Penh, where contestants will be judged in 5 categories.
We have 5 main categories. First is beauty, second is manner, and third is attitude, and the education, and what they do, like to, let's say, the charity or any related to environment, because we are strongly focused on the environment.
Miss Planet International has established itself as a platform that not only showcases the elegance and grace of its contestants, but also places a strong emphasis on environmental advocacy and sustainability. As the event continues to grow in global prominence, the third edition promises to be a spectacular showcase of diverse talents, unique cultures, and a united commitment to safeguarding our planet. More information on the pageant, including tickets, can be found on the Miss Planet International Facebook page. Kristen Winters, EAC News. You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. Police arrested a man yesterday on charges of intentional violence after video showed him firing a slingshot multiple times at a young girl on a scooter, ultimately causing injury to her face. According to Sarak Cha police, the suspect, Gwen Yang Yi, was arrested at his house in Phnom Penh's Down Pen district, where authorities confiscated the weapon. They say the incident occurred just before 6:30 p.m. on September 11th, when the victim was riding a push scooter in front of the suspect's home. The man, seated in his house, aimed at the girl with his slingshot multiple times before finally hitting her in the face just below her left eye. In the video, the girl can be seen reacting immediately by covering her face and crying out. Her father then tried to find out who had shot at her, but no one came forward. The following day, the father of the victim asked his neighbors for security footage and was able to see the old man firing a slingshot from his house. The father then called the police, who arrested the man shortly after noon and brought him in for questioning. No motive has been given for the attack, while the police prepare a case to take the suspect to court. Kristen Winters, EAC News. You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. Japanese Ambassador to Cambodia, Ueno Atsushi, is meeting with members of the former and new administrations this week to maintain cooperative ties as the Cambodian government transitions into the hands of the next generation. Today, the Japanese ambassador met with new National Assembly President Khuon Sodari, where the two diplomats pledged to strengthen diplomacy and cooperation between their countries, especially in matters of trade, human resource development, and person-to-person exchanges. The National Assembly stressed that Cambodia and Japan have a long history of friendly relations, and that this year marks the 70th anniversary of their diplomatic ties under various kings, prime ministers, and even emperors. Khuon Sotari said that the Cambodian Congress is proud to be a friend of Japan, and that the country is grateful for Japan's investment in the banking, technology, electronic, and auto sectors that have created jobs and helped to reduce poverty by boosting economic growth. The Japanese ambassador graciously accepted the praise and promised to continue lobbying for his country's investment in Cambodia, particularly in terms of increasing the volume of trade between the two countries and encouraging tourism. He pledged a continuation of scholarships to Cambodian students and civil servants, and to provide skills training to Cambodian workers in Japan. He also promised to provide human resource development, especially for young members of parliament and the National Assembly civil servants, as the Cambodian government welcomes hundreds of fresh faces to its ranks. Kwon Sotdari emphasized the important role Japan has played in establishing Cambodia's peace and development and said that the Cambodian people will never forget their contribution. Kristen Winters, EAC News. You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. Japanese ambassador to Cambodia, Ueno Atsushi, met with former Prime Minister Hun Sen to praise the peaceful transfer of power and to reaffirm his commitment to working with the new administration. In yesterday's meeting, the Japanese ambassador admired the royal government's view that war cannot end war and praised its policy of using dialogue as a foundation for peace. He went on to praise the cooperation and comprehensive strategic partnership between Cambodia and Japan, adding that Japanese Prime Minister Fumio Kishida was determined to continue with close cooperation with Prime Minister Hun Manet and his new administration. Hun Sen lauded the friendships between him and the current and previous leaders of Japan that he collaborated with for over 38 years as Prime Minister of Cambodia, including former Prime Ministers Shinzo Abe and Noboru Takeshita. He added that Japan greatly contributed to Cambodia's current achievements of peace and development. In the over 70 years of diplomatic ties between the two countries, Japan has made major contributions in restoring Cambodian infrastructure, upgrading 5G and 4G networking, and expanding its seaport capacity. During the meeting, the Japanese ambassador also announced plans to inaugurate a Toyota assembly plant in the kingdom in 2024. Kristen Winters, EAC News. You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. Minister of Rural Development, Chai Riti-sen, said that by 2025, all Cambodians will have access to clean water. He said that the plan is currently 80% complete while speaking to the Japanese ambassador. Yesterday afternoon, the minister touted his plan to the Japanese ambassador to Cambodia, Ueno Atsushi, who came to pay a courtesy call and discuss business. Chai Riti-sen informed Mr. Atsushi about the ministry's policy to invigorate the rural economy by constructing infrastructure to connect the whole country and improve people's quality of life by providing access to clean water and educating the public on its use. He said that by 2025, Cambodia will have enough clean water to supply the whole country, who will be educated on the importance of proper use of latrines to eliminate open defecation, which remains a health issue for those without access to running water. The minister went on to highlight the efforts to boost the rural economy by providing training and skills other than agriculture to provide provincial populations with alternative forms of income. The Japanese ambassador praised the long-standing partnership of the two countries under the leadership of former Prime Minister Hun Sen and promised to continue to cooperate with the new administration to promote rural development in Cambodia. Kristen Winters, EAC News. You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. Minister of Agriculture, Forestry, and Fisheries, Ditina, is visiting the provinces this week to observe the current situation of rice production and to advise farmers and vendors on how to maximize profits and boost the agricultural economy. After meeting with the Battambang governor and owner of one of the area's leading rice mills on Sunday, Ditina and his delegation went on to meet with farmers in Banteay Meanchey yesterday. There, he advised farmers to plant pure rice varieties, such as Karum Duol, or Cambodian jasmine rice, for the wet season, and Sang Kro Ob, a type of fragrant long-grain rice, for the dry season, as these varieties demand higher prices, are nationally branded crops, and have high market demand. In addition to inspecting rice cultivation, the Minister of Agriculture also surveyed the situation along the border in terms of export and import strategy, with a focus on what products farmers are producing for export. He said that the border inspection focuses on the 4 economic hubs of Banteay Meanchey, Battambang, Pursat, and Pailin provinces, all of which border Thailand. According to Banteay Meanchey's Department of Agriculture, the cultivation of wet season rice crops has reached 100% of its yield plan of 769,000 tons for 2023, having planted over 252,000 hectares and harvesting nearly 227,000 hectares. Farmers expect to plant over 52,000 hectares of rice for the upcoming dry season, equivalent to about 238% of the province's planned yield. Kristen Winters, EAC News. Watching EAC News, thank you for joining us. Prime Minister Hun Manet announced citizens will be allowed to renew their passports at foreign passport offices, starting in South Korea. In a meeting with nearly 20,000 workers in Kampong Speu province on Saturday, the Prime Minister said that the move was intended to make the process easier for Cambodian citizens living or traveling abroad, who will now be able to renew their passports directly in whatever country they are staying. The Cambodian embassy in South Korea supported the announcement, saying it had eased their difficulties and made public services more accessible to the people. As of 2020, Cambodia had about 65,500 people living and working in South Korea. Citizens in South Korea are happy with the new move and say it shows the new administration's care for its citizens abroad. Kristen Winters, EAC News. You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. A report released by the Cambodian Rice Federation says the Cambodian rice exports have reached 58% of their goal for 2023, with nearly 402,000 tons of milled rice shipped to 56 countries in the first 8 months of the year, totaling $278 million in revenue. Cambodia exports a variety of rice types to the international market. The largest share is in fragrant rice, followed by white rice, parboiled rice, and organic rice. Since its June report, when China was the leading buyer of Cambodian rice, the European Union has become the top buyer of Cambodia's milled rice, purchasing 164,682 tons in 2023, followed by China and its autonomous regions with almost 144,000 tons. The January-August exports accounted for 58% of the planned export amount of 700,000 tons this year, the report added. In February, CRF President Chan So-keng expressed lofty goals of increasing milled rice exports to China to 400,000 tons this year. With less than half of that goal met 8 months into the year, it looks like the CRF will fall short of both that goal and its yearly goal to export a total of 750,000 tons of milled rice, which has since been reduced to 700,000 tons. In 2022, Cambodia exported over 630,000 tons of milled rice to 59 countries, earning $414 million, while the revenue from unmilled paddy rice exports was around $841 million. The CRF has set an ambitious goal to export at least 1 million tons of milled rice in 2025. Just last week, Indonesian President Joko Widodo agreed to import 120,000 tons of rice from Cambodia over the next 4 years at the ASEAN Summit. Only time will tell if the CRF's export goal will survive the threats of climate change and global economic uncertainty. In August, over 34,000 hectares of rice were threatened by extreme drought in Battambang alone. Kristen Winters, EAC News. Watching EAC News, thank you for joining us. Commissioner of the National Police, General Saw Tate, issued a decree today removing Lieutenant Colonel Hong Sarom from his newly appointed post as Chief of Police of Kampong Tom Stung District after his criminal past surfaced on social media. The dismissal was based on an 8-year-old crime in which the lieutenant colonel was involved in a gold jewelry heist in Stung Market that took place in broad daylight on March 8, 2015. The removal came after Prime Minister Hun Manet requested an investigation into the man, who had previously been booked on charges and whose mugshot had been circulating on social media. The Prime Minister then ordered a thorough review of individuals before they are appointed to military or civilian state institutions. Kristen Winters, EAC News.
You're watching EAC News. Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Hun Manet returned to Cambodia last night after attending the ASEAN Summit in Indonesia. Over 4 days, the Prime Minister attended 32 meetings, leaving him a little time to rest, but confirming his legitimacy on the international stage. Speaking at a press conference after the delegation plane touched down in Phnom Penh Airport, Delegate Sonaro said that on the journey home, Prime Minister Hun Manet was tired and was wondering how his father must have felt after such an event. Sonaro noted that the former Prime Minister Hun Sen was much older and did so much work. He said that the younger generation is realising just how big the job is. He added that the Prime Minister Hun Manet had little time for resting during the ASEAN Summit because he had no time to attend meetings and monitor the situation at home. This morning, the Prime Minister posted a photo taken by his wife during the flight to Jakarta, showing him reviewing documents. He said the travel time is the best time to do necessary work because after the plane landed, it was meeting from morning until night. Prime Minister Hun Manet led a Cambodian delegation to the ASEAN Summit on September 4th and met with the ASEAN leaders in addition to leaders from China and India. Solnado said that the visit to the Asian summit solidified the legacy of the new Prime Minister and demonstrated the international acceptance of his appointment to his father's previous role. He said that this has attracted additional investment to Cambodia and that the economic negotiations were also held this week. Anthony Ellis, EAC News. You're watching EAC News. Thanks for joining us. Mr. Kim Jin-pyol, President of the National Assembly of the Republic of Korea, has praised the wisdom of Cambodia's former Prime Minister Hun Sen. He suggested that even though Hun Sen is no longer Prime Minister of Cambodia, he should continue to contribute ideas for promoting peace both regionally and globally. Mr. Kim expressed these sentiments during a meeting with the former Prime Minister Hun Sen, the President of the Cambodian People's Party, on January 7, 2023. The Speaker of the National Assembly expressed gratitude to the CPP President for his long-standing support of the Republic of Korea and for fostering strong bilateral relations. Mr. Kim commended the former Prime Minister Hun Sen as a wise leader and encouraged him to persist in his efforts to promote lasting peace in the region and in the world. CPP President Hun Sen, in turn, spoke about the historic friendship between the two nations and thanked the Korean side for their assistance during the challenging times, including Cambodia's socio-economic, recovering from the civil war, and ongoing development. Additionally, the CPP President urged the South Korean National Assembly to support the construction of the Cambodian-Korea Friendship Bridge, a symbol of enduring friendship between the two countries. During the meeting, both parties emphasized the value of cooperation and trusted partnership in the Asian-Korean and the Mekong-Korean relations. They applauded their joint achievements in ratifying the Cambodian-Korea Free Trade Agreement, even amidst the challenges posed by the COVID-19 pandemic. They urged both governments to continue their close collaboration and strive for further achievements that would benefit for citizens of both nations. Anthony Ellis, EAC News.
You're watching EAC News. Thank you for joining us. Members of CBRE, the leading real estate broker in Cambodia, held meetings to discuss the future of real estate in Cambodia, the challenges the market currently faces, and how to address them. Led by Chairman Mark Townsend, the discussions reflected on CBRE's 15 years on the Cambodian real estate scene and noted the rapid development of properties in the country and how developers need to rethink their strategies in order to survive an oversaturated market. Cambodian developers are facing a crisis of supply and demand, with every city in the world experiencing an oversupply of office space. CBRE Managing Director Lawrence Lennon noted the drastic decline in occupancy rates for the company's office buildings.
Today, we're looking at around 1 million square meters of office space. 2019, we had 90% occupancy on average. Today, it's around 58%.
Chairman Mark Townsend believes this is a case of developers getting caught up in the initial boom of large properties that took place pre-COVID and expecting the same returns without adjusting to the current situation.
Well, I mean, a lot of it is to do with rents, and certainly in relatively mediocre office buildings, the landlords were able to get a very high rent, as they were developers for residential condominiums, where the rent per square, the capital value, the price per square meter was as high as Bangkok. And in many cases, I remember 2019, 2018, higher than Vietnam, where the affordability is greater, the urbanization is stronger, et cetera, et cetera. So I think it did get ahead of itself.
He also noted the need for more modern design.
You go to an office building, an office in Phnom Penh, and it's still, the design and layout is still something from the 70s and 80s. It's not, if we go to somewhere in Singapore or Hong Kong, it's very collaborative. And I think people will start to realize that if you want to get young people to come and work hard for you every day, you're going to have to design the space very differently, with breakout space, with more space per worker, per employee, a bigger canteen area.
Townsend notes that COVID, the return to work, the credit crunch, and the war in Ukraine have all compounded to create a real estate market that has changed direction and is in desperate need of an overhaul in terms of how building managers build, use, and design their properties. Lawrence Lennon warned that anyone still operating on a 2019 playbook is likely to be left behind because the cycle has been altered. The company promotes a circular strategy of refill, repurpose, re-energize, reposition, and reuse for existing buildings to discourage the unwise and harmful practice of constantly knocking down buildings to build anew.
Don't tear something down until you're absolutely sure. Don't build anything until you realize, particularly in the retail sector, retail trends are changing all the time. The design, what the purpose for which they're used for, the types of tenants gets bigger, gets smaller. And we've seen this so much in the West.
CBRE praised the factory in Phnom Penh as an excellent example of repurpose after developers turned a derelict Levi factory into a mixed-use creative hub used by the community, new businesses, and emerging artists. When developers do choose to build anew, Townsend stressed the need for them to think about long-term use of their building. With consumer trends and business models shifting all the time, developers should be thinking ahead to how their building could be used beyond its immediate purpose.
There is a huge responsibility now with the ESG, with global warming, to make sure when you build something, you've got to build it for a purpose that could change.
The company notes affordability, demographics, urbanization, infrastructure, and lack of transparency as main drivers for real estate. Townsend also spoke on the obstacles standing in the way for major investors in Cambodia, especially when it comes to the lack of regulation and transparency. His company's inability to provide vital information such as zoning or height restrictions on properties, which vary widely and often without logic, has created a real challenge for large institutional investors. Having worked in Vietnam for 20 years, Townsend witnessed the shift that happened for the country when Samsung became a major investor. He noted that Vietnam went from primarily producing shoes and garments to becoming a tech hub. He said that it created a dramatic shift in the Vietnamese people, who started to see more potential in what kind of work they could do in the tech field. Townsend hopes for the same shift for Cambodians and noted that while Cambodia does have some catching up to do, it is already ahead in terms of infrastructure development, which signals to investors that the country is serious about its economic development. However, it does remain unclear which road the kingdom will take in the near future to further its economic vision of becoming a high-income country by 2050. Kristen Winters, EAC News.
Another important area.
តើលោកអ្នកចិត្តរៀបអាពាហ៍ពិពាហ៍មែនទេហើយពិបាករកក្រុមហ៊ុនថតវីដេអូផ្សាយផ្ទាល់ដែលមានគុណភាពមែនទេអស់កង្វល់រ៉ាទីកាជាក្រុមហ៊ុនទទួលស្គាល់លំដាប់អន្តរជាតិលើសេវាកម្មថតផ្សាយផ្ទាល់គ្រប់កម្មវិធីកម្រិត 4K ដំបូងបង្អស់នៅកម្ពុជារ៉ាទីកាប្រើប្រាស់ឧបករណ៍ទំនើបម៉ាកល្បីៗធានាគុណភាពការផលិតតាមបច្ចេកវិទ្យាទាន់សម័យរ៉ាទីកានឹងជួយធ្វើឲ្យកម្មវិធីលោកអ្នកកាន់តែមានភាពអស្ចារ្យលោកអ្នកនឹងបានឃើញរាល់សកម្មភាពក្នុងពិធីទៅលើកញ្ចក់ទូរទស្សន៍ទំហំធំកម្រិត 4K និងការបញ្ចាំងលើផ្ទាំងក្រណាត់សព្រមទាំង LED ដែលមានរូបភាពច្បាស់ត្រជាក់ភ្នែកសូមអញ្ជើញកក់ពីឥឡូវនេះតាមរយៈលេខទូរស័ព្ទ012 823 848 017 838 889និង016 823 848រ៉ាទីកាទំនុកចិត្តការទទួលខុសត្រូវនិងគុណភាពខ្ពស់រ៉ាទីកា Entertainment ក្រុមតន្ត្រីអាជីពកំសាន្តបែបស្រាលពីរោះមិនថ្លង់ភ្ញៀវរំភើបចិត្តពិធីរឹតតែអស្ចារ្យ Relax រាធិការ Entertainment ញ៉ាំងឲ្យកម្មវិធីលោកអ្នកកាន់តែមានភាពអធិកអធមរាធិការ Entertainment ក្រុមតន្ត្រីដ៏ល្អសម្រាប់ក្រុមគ្រួសារលោកអ្នកសូមអញ្ជើញកក់ពីឥឡូវនេះសម្រាប់កម្មវិធីលោកអ្នកតាមរយៈលេខទូរស័ព្ទ017 838 889 012 823 848 និង016 823 848
If it's happening and you need to know about it, you'll get it all right here. EAC News brings you updates and breaking news in English across all of our platforms and channels. The EAC News app, YouTube,